Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a massive hidden reality within India's new data privacy law, the DPDPA. We're talking about a huge invisible canyon inside large organizations right now. On one side, what the privacy law expects on paper. On the other, how businesses actually operate on the ground. Let's get into it.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the privacy governance gap, then look at central law versus decentralized reality. After that, we'll hit the privacy risk multiplier, the aggregated data fiduciary model, the role of the branch privacy officer, and wrap up by looking beyond the banking sector.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, the privacy governance gap.
It's a really simple question, right? But the answer is, honestly, kind of a mess. Under the DPDPA, the buck stops with the legal data fiduciary. In finance, that means the bank itself. The law literally points to this giant overarching corporate entity and says, you are the one determining how personal data is processed. But here's where it gets fascinating. The entity that's legally liable on paper is vastly different from the actual people protecting your data on the ground. The bank is one single legal person, sure, but its operations? They span thousands and thousands of physical locations.
Which brings us to Section 2, Central Law, Decentralized Reality.
You know, modern core banking systems create this really powerful illusion of centralized control. Because the tech is centralized, we just kind of assume the data processing is too. But let's look at the reality on the ground. You might be a customer of the whole bank, but the actual collection of your highly sensitive personal data, that almost always happens locally. Think about it for a second. Where does consent management happen? The branch. Where do they handle your grievances? The branch. Physical loan documents are collected, verified, scanned, and stored right there through local operations. So for the average customer, that local branch manager sitting at that specific desk is the true face of the bank.
Let's zoom in on that desk for Section 3, the privacy risk multiplier.
Because a local branch isn't just shuffling paper around anymore. They are fully hooked up. They're independently using AI-assisted customer service tools, OCR apps to scan your IDs, complex loan scoring models, cloud-based business apps, the list goes on. And here's the kicker. Every single one of these tools processes your personal data, and they are all running independently. These massive operational decisions are happening miles and miles away from the head office's centralized data protection officer.
And we're not just talking about internal software here. Branches are also independently firing off your data to third-party vendors all day long. They're handing over files to local recovery agencies, valuation experts, legal firms, document digitizers, you name it. Every single one of those relationships involves the independent processing of personal data. When you multiply that across thousands of branches, the privacy risks grow exponentially.
So this creates a terrifying cascade of failure. Legally, accountability rests entirely with the big central bank. But operationally, responsibility is completely scattered. It's wildly ironic when you think about it. A billion-dollar bank's entire compliance success might literally rely on a stressed-out branch manager just trying to deal with a broken scanner. If a local employee collects too much info on a loan app, or misses a vital consent record, or if a local vendor mishandles data, the whole bank takes the fall. DPDPA compliance absolutely succeeds or fails right there on the branch floor.
So how do we fix this? Let's move to Section 4, the Aggregated Data Fiduciary.
DGPSI Bank proposes this incredibly practical framework called the Aggregated Data Fiduciary. Now, this doesn't magically rewrite the law. The overarching bank is still the sole legal data fiduciary. But what this model does is push the actual operational governance down to the branches. It treats those individual branches as operational data fiduciaries. Since financial data is so incredibly sensitive, this framework recognizes that both the central bank and the local branch have to act as significant data fiduciaries in their day-to-day practices. It cascades accountability right down to the exact level where data processing decisions are actually being made.
Now, you might be wondering, hey, how is this different from earlier models, like a super data fiduciary? Well, a super fiduciary is designed to govern completely separate legal entities. Think of a massive healthcare conglomerate with different hospital corporations. Our aggregated model, on the other hand, is perfectly tailored for a single legal entity that just happens to have a massive, highly decentralized operational footprint.
Let's see who is actually running this in Section 5, the branch privacy officer.
For this to work, accountability has to perfectly cascade down the corporate ladder. Look, a company has one board of directors, right? But every regional office has managers responsible for local compliance. Under this aggregated model, DPDPA accountability flows from the board down to the statutory enterprise DPO who holds the legal bag, and finally right down to the branch manager. The branch manager effectively becomes the branch privacy officer. They are the designated local coordinator. They absolutely do not replace the central DPO. Instead, they serve as their vital, necessary boots on the ground.
And listen, this model changes everything, especially if you're an independent data auditor. If an auditor walks in and only looks at head office policies, that audit is basically useless. To provide credible assurance under the DPDPA, auditors have to evaluate these specific, localized branch operations. They need to get in there and check branch-level consent management, how local vendors are governed, how AI is actually deployed on the branch floor, and how incidents are reported locally. This aggregated governance model is what makes that granular level of auditability actually possible.
Finally, let's zoom out for Section 6, beyond the banking sector.
While banking is a fantastic illustration of this problem, the aggregated data fiduciary model is a universally applicable solution. Think about it. Insurance companies, giant retail chains, educational institutions with dozens of campuses, or huge franchise networks. In all of these cases, the legal data fiduciary is one single centralized entity, but the operational processing of personal data is scattered everywhere. As organizations rapidly adopt AI and decentralized cloud services, building a government structure that actually matches your real operational footprint? That's no longer optional. It is an absolute necessity. The DDPPA establishes the legal accountability, sure, but it is entirely up to organizations to make that accountability actually work in the real world. So ask yourself this: does your organization's legal definition of privacy compliance actually match its operational reality on the ground? Or are you just hoping a centralized policy in a PDF somewhere will magically protect highly decentralized data? It's a critical question to answer before the regulator comes knocking. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you next time.